This evening on Money Matters, we take a look at the COVID-19 impact on the oil and gas industry. We discuss how to remain competitive and emerge stronger in the wake of the pandemic by finding new market opportunities while exploring cost-effective measures. All this now. Hello and welcome to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kausji. Today we discuss how the oil and gas industry has navigated through challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. We welcome the President and Group Chief Executive Officer of Petroleum Nasional Berhad, Petronas, Tunku Muhammad Taufik, on the show with us today. Thank you for joining us, Tunku. How are you doing?
As well as I can be. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic to have some time out of your busy schedule, Tunku Taufik. Now let's delve straight into Petronas's newly released third quarter financial year performance results that just came out. I wanted to note that Petronas has recorded slight improvements in Q3 2020. Tell me a little bit about how this compares to the figures from Q2 as well as H1 20.
Yeah, we've just released the third quarter financial performance, and I think given the challenging market conditions that we've contended with, we can see the expectations need to be reset across the industry. Our quarter three results shown that the group has remained agile in responding to the challenging market landscape. Overall, the financials, of course, as you've pointed out, have shown an improvement, while the quarter three picture year to date, the revenues were 134.7 billion. It is a notable decline, a 24% decline from the corresponding period last year. Similarly, this trickled down to our EBITDA, 43.4 billion, a 41% decrease from last year. The same period last year, that was relative to the 73.5 billion we saw. These are all, of course, a reflection of the unprecedented environment that we operate in. But there are bright spots, as you rightly pointed out, Tamina. I think if we look at quarter three versus quarter two, the revenue has indeed picked up, 41.1 billion versus 34 in last quarter. There was an ability to yield just slightly a very small profit before taxation. If we were to take away the effects of impairment, in fact, we could have actually registered a 2.6 billion. We have indeed registered a 2.6 billion in the quarter. And before impairments, for the 9 months that we've reached, we've come to a point where we've reached 10.3 after removing the effects of impairments. So this is a year that has shall we describe it, a year that's prompting a great reset across the industry. We're focused on ensuring that the cash flow from operating activities remains robust. Despite the softer results, I'm glad to report that Petronas still managed to generate positive CFFOs. We reached 32.6 billion. And we have spent CapEx, despite the challenges put before us, 22.5 billion as at the quarter three mark. And mainly these were attributable to our continued commitment in delivering upstream projects. Before you probably preempt, I'm probably going to preempt you, how was this relative to everyone else? It is pretty much in line with the other oil majors and the other national oil corporations we see in the space. There is a definite need for us to remain as resilient as possible in responding to these market challenges and these ever-inflated levels of volatilities that have been brought about and probably exacerbated by both the glut as well as the COVID-19 pandemic.
How has this disciplined capital and operational spending been upheld on Petronas' side? If you could give us a little bit of insight into how it works behind the scenes.
Yeah, given the effects, and the effects of the pandemic were stunning, actually. And I mentioned this in an earlier results announcement. When the peak of the pandemic hit the industry, we saw about north of 20 million barrels per day of oil demand disappear. Over 80% of the working population were suffering from lockdowns. And of course, consumption just went into free fall. Together with the, I would say, the failure to properly coordinate it within the OPEC and OPEC Plus we saw a supply glut, and we plumbed down to negative territory for WTI, and Brent went down to $12. So when we saw these signs emerge, I think Petronas is an entity which has ridden through industry cycles, and admirably, I think as a management team, as a leadership team, we decided very quickly in crisis mode that we had to focus on liquidity. We had to focus on ensuring the safety and health of our employees. That was of paramount concern. And of course, then responding with the natural discipline that is exercised by energy players within this space. We committed to a CapEx and OpEx rationalization. And of course, early on this year, we targeted 21% reduction and 12% reduction, respectively, in these spaces. Of course, this may not be this may not be something that industry players in the country would want to hear, but I think this has been a systematic and replicated response across, as we want to preserve the continuity and reliability of operations. Cash remains indeed the most paramount concern for us in this unprecedented crisis.
Really well summarized, Tunku Taufik. Thank you for that. And now, on that note, we are going for a short break. Find us on Twitter meanwhile and share your thoughts on the discussion so far. Welcome back to Money Matters. If you're just joining us, we're speaking to the President and Group Chief Executive Officer of Petronas, Tunku Muhammad Taufik, on today's show. Tunku Taufik, now I wanted to go deeper into what fiscal strategies has Petronas been employing to fund its operations, service debts, meet obligations, as well as invest in its future growth during these past grueling 9 months.
Thank you for the question. I think the most pertinent question for everyone within this industry. Liquidity, the continuity of the day-to-day operations, without which I would not want to put it as a boastful claim, we would not have been able to pump the gas, get your pump stations filled with liquid, and ensure that when you flick the switch on, the gas-powered stations can power up homes and industries. Liquidity management was one key work stream that was immediately triggered once this happened. And we were fortunate entering into this group and into this crisis with what many people, many investors and stakeholders have described as a fortress balance sheet. I think going into this situation, Petronas is one of the few, if not a very small number of oil companies remaining in a net cash position. And even as at the Q3 period, we still have managed to sustain at group level north of 153 billion worth of cash and fund and investments. And even at the holding company level, that figure remains indeed healthy at north of 60. So in order to ensure that liquidity was preserved, immediately a work stream was triggered at that juncture when the crisis first unfurled. I was not in this position. I was still the chief financial officer. And my predecessor, along with the management team, all of us huddled together and made sure that the ability to keep the funds at hand was of the paramount concern. And we had to ensure everything from working capital management, controlling the credit exposures, ensuring receivables were kept within a certain band, ensuring that our customer KYCs were kept tight, while at the same time also ensuring that contractors could still enjoy their payment regularly and also ensure that they could deliver and continue our project deliveries and operations with minimal interruption.
That's right. Now, liquidity definitely anchors the BCP for all oil and gas. Tunku Taufik, from there, I'd like to swiftly move us along to, in the interest of accelerating diversification of product portfolio to future-proof Petronas, what are some of the areas of interest currently for the holdings?
Yeah. While all of this is swirling around us, the energy players are also having to contend with one other theme that is not spoken of greatly here yet, but energy transition. Everywhere we speak to customers, counterparties, investors, potential partners, the ability to actually deal with the energy transition is what is going to spur confidence. And where Petronas has now decided, and we've embarked on a three-pronged strategy, maximizing cash generators, expanding the core, and chasing calculated step-outs, calculated and informed bets in step-out areas. And this is where portfolio diversification will need to be done at pace. As energy transition, which was thought to be imminent, it is now here upon us. We need to actually ensure that the revenue lines remain sustainable as the world demands a more sustainable and cleaner future.
Absolutely. I like that you make the point about a cleaner and more sustainable future, Tunku Taufik. On that note, tell me a little bit more about how Petronas' ideal to achieving NZCE, the net zero carbon emissions, will actually be executed.
Okay. We may look at this target as something being very ambitious, and we were declared or recognized one of the earliest within the Asia-Pacific region as an NOC to step out and commit to such an aspiration. It's a responsibility, I believe, and our commitment is underlined by this net zero carbon emission target. This net zero target by 2050 is, in fact, something we can achieve. We've already stated a commitment to get our CO2 equivalent emissions to 49 million tons by 2024. But there are building blocks to this: how we run our operations offshore, how we electrify more of our plants, how we even contemplate offsets to offsets from nature-based solutions, as well as even embark on potential exploration of CCUS solutions. These are going to be levers that are necessarily going to be enacted by any responsible energy player. And I think it is no longer going to be a luxury. It's integral to the license to operate for any industry player. So we are committed to it, and it is almost a necessity now. And you will see many regions, stakeholders, policymakers indicating the switch is coming. It's coming, and it's more aggressive. And it is going to be a responsibility for the next generation that responsible corporate citizens like ourselves will have to live up to.
Absolutely. I think you make the great point there that it's no longer a choice. It's in fact a necessity, and getting ahead of the game will in fact reap the benefits sooner rather than later. Thank you, Tunku Taufik. We now take a short breather. In the meantime, connect with us on Twitter, and once we return, we discuss the immediate outlook for the industry as well as future sustainability. Welcome back to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kausji. We're discussing sustainability and future projections in the oil and gas sector amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's move along and take a look at Petronas's strategies more in depth. Tunku Taufik, on that note, speaking about more deeper strategies as well as the cleaner fuel options for the marine industry and impacting sustainability, I also wanted to commend that Petronas has just been named Malaysia's first liquefied natural gas or LNG solution provider with your VPS completed at RGT in Pengerang, JB. Now, how much has this cost in investments and why is it deemed a wise move despite the current oil and gas market sentiments?
Despite the current oil and gas market sentiments, people like us taking a long-term view know that oil and gas will still feature up to, in any scenario, right? If you take IEA's greenest scenario, we are still pointing towards oil and gas forming up to 50% of the energy mix. While it's being displaced by renewables, I think the role of gas in particular as a transition fuel is going to become more prominent, particularly in emerging and growing Asia, where there is a need to service the increasing affluence, urbanization, and rising living standards. But a lot of these jurisdictions do not immediately have the infrastructure or grid accessibility. What you've mentioned earlier, Tamina, are a semblance of a number of our efforts towards making gas more accessible, if I may pick on gas. The VPS solution that you picked on was launched quite recently, September 2020, as you rightly pointed in JB. We are indicating to the world that we are here to provide you more flexible solutions, even to our LNG customers, smaller cargoes. Getting these delivered by ISO tanks is a signal to actually say you can get LNG even while you're not connected to the grid. We are also thinking of addressing the marine transport sector, long seen to be an emitter. And I think after IMO 2020, a compulsion to move to cleaner fuels and LNG bunkering fits that space nicely. And that is why moving with an existing product to these new areas answers and ticks most of the boxes. They create new top lines, but they are also part of a more sustainable future. And those are the kind of strategies that Petronas will be pursuing as part of diversification, adding new top lines to its stable.
Fantastic. Now from there, Tunku Taufik, moving on to renewable energy, what would you be able to share with us about Sarawak Energy and Petronas's plan for a green hydrogen venture?
Yeah. Sarawak is a partner, well, I think it's been a colorful history, but a long and very strong relationship. We are now moving, and as I remarked in my statements when it was issued with regards to this recent MOU that we signed with Sarawak Energy, we're moving our partnership beyond that just focus within the hydrocarbon space. Hydrogen demand is something that has grown more than threefold since 1975. Hydrogen is of course, a clean energy carrier. And indeed, as an energy carrier, it is something that will indeed help the whole world address emissions. We are already producing hydrogen in a number of forms, but they're at the blue end of the spectrum, not completely green. And of course, efforts will need to continue. Part of the equation, of course, is Sarawak Energy's ability to provide very cost-effective and competitive electricity. Electrolysis is part of the solution in delivering a viable and sustainable hydrogen supply to emerging Asia, as well as the core markets that we've served in the Far East. And therefore, this MOU makes sense. It is a memorandum of understanding which will start with studies and further capital investments that will hopefully yield a competitive hydrogen supply at scale in the not too distant future.
Absolutely, at scale. I like that. Now, from there, Tunku Taufik, moving into looking at Malaysia's push towards being, of course, a developed nation and economy, which also incorporates naturally long-term principles of sustainability. Please tell me what would be Petronas's play in being a key driver in all of this in the immediate short term, particularly looking at COVID-19 and pandemic economic recovery.
Yeah. With sustainability, there's the dimension that everybody jumps on, it's emissions. But one dimension and perspective that maybe not enough of a song and dance has been made about what Petronas has done. Let's be very clear, Petronas has had a long commitment to nurture and strengthen the local OGSC community. We have committed to creating vendors within our vendor development program since 1993, 110 of them. We've worked one level below that and addressing the financeability as well as the access to finance to the VDPs under our program with a VDPX program. We worked with banks to ensure that there's ability to access finance at secure terms and low borrowing rates, which are tagged to the work that they do for us. So on these fronts, I think we've nurtured an oil and gas service industry, and we are continuing as we evolve and address the energy transition to do this. On a local front, as well as in many jurisdictions that we operate, we've long held a commitment to education. We have done since 1975, 37,000 Malaysian students within our education sponsorship program, and not a small number, over 3.3 billion worth of sponsorships dished out, and strong testimony to the talent bench. I think many of the people within very senior roles in Petronas came through the program, yours truly included. And I think over and above that, the upskilling of the general populace serving both the offshore sector through Alam, within the sector, within the industry, servicing the oil and gas industry, UTP, as well as the technical capacity through INSTEP. All of these were known and calculated investments made in order to make sure we have a flourishing and sustainable oil and gas industry. Now we need to tilt the needle a bit towards addressing this energy transition. But indeed, we have a role. We are not only going to bang the drum about being a Fortune 500 entity, we have a responsibility in ensuring that the ecosystem around us also flourishes despite the current blip or hiccup that we are facing. It's a big hiccup indeed.
Yes, very well encapsulated, though, looking at long-term perspectives as well as the immediate term. Thank you so much for joining us on Money Matters, Tunku Taufik. It's been such a pleasure. Now, of course, before we go, find us on Twitter and let us know your thoughts about today's discussion. We'll be back next week with more money insights that matter. Till then, I'm Tamina Kausji. Thank you for watching and stay safe.